Hi, folks, it's Mark Merrill with Farm. Continuing with our special editions on programs in regard to the state of Maine and the entire country, we present today a presentation, an announcement from Billy Bob Falkingham, you see here, who is our House GOP minority representative in Augusta, talking about taxes, and how Janet Mills has pretty much undermined the state of Maine in connection with Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill back earlier in 2025. Here's a synopsis of what Mr. Falkingham had to say. Very enlightening, and hopefully, folks, it will be something that will call everyone in the state of Maine to action to stop the Democrats from taxing us to death. Hope to have it here for you shortly, folks. Apologize for the delay.
Hey, good morning. There's some important stuff I wanted to update you guys on. I'm going to try to keep this as concise as I can. There's a lot here, a bunch of different issues. I may have to do some follow-up videos in the future. I wanted to tell you some important information about the big, beautiful bill, a President Trump bill that passed through Congress earlier this year. Now, in that bill is contained what I consider the biggest blue-collar tax cuts that I can remember. It's been a long time since I think blue-collar people have had tax cuts like this. Now, in that is contained federal tax cuts for overtime and tips, and also the removal of tax on Social Security. There's also a tax deduction for auto loans, and there's a lot of other stuff there in that bill. But those are some high-level ones that I wanted to point out. Now, the removal of tax on Social Security is something that I have advocated for as long as I found out about Social Security. Why would you tax something that's based off of a tax that was taken from people throughout their lifetime? It makes no sense. But apparently in, the mid-1980s, it made sense to Joe Biden because he led the way on adding that tax to it. But I digress. They are getting rid of the tax on Social Security. And then the two other things, the tax on tips and the tax on overtime, the removal of tax on tips and the removal of tax on overtime. Those are things that I just never thought would happen. I never thought we would see that actually happen. Those are things that, even I thought are just campaign fantasies that we'll never see. Unbelievably, President Trump and the Republicans in Congress lived up to their word on that and actually passed that. So the federal government has removed those taxes. Unfortunately, here in the state of Maine, Janet Mills has signaled that the state of Maine will not be doing that. They will not be aligning the state's tax code with those federal changes. So unfortunately, here in Maine, where we have a very high state income tax, one of the highest in the country, Mainers will continue to be taxed on tips and their overtime. This is upsetting for a whole bunch of reasons. It's not like the state is running on a bare bones budget or that we don't have the money. As a matter of fact, the state budget has grown immensely since Governor Janet Mills took control. So there's plenty of money there. They're just spending it on other stuff that's not the main people. And one of the big reasons why that is especially upsetting to me is while the federal government is cutting taxes on blue-collar people, the state of Maine has added taxes on blue-collar people. They've decided to tax cigarettes. Unfortunately, smoking's a bad habit. I smoked for a long time myself and was able to quit. It took a lot of tries, and so I understand what it's like for people out there smoking. You don't just, quit like that because someone has decided to tax you another $1.50 a pack. They've increased the tax on cannabis. They have removed the deduction on seniors' pensions, which was something we just recently passed a couple of years ago. But they went and took it back. And starting here at the first of the year, if you have Netflix or Hulu or Spotify, those are going to be taxed. So while Maine has added more taxes onto the people, the federal government is removing taxes, and the state of Maine is not setting aside the money to do that here for you in Maine. And meanwhile, we are having rampant fraud in our Medicaid system. Rampant fraud. The government knows about this too. This isn't a conspiracy theory or a maybe it's there. They know. They have there's paper proof that they have uncovered this fraud and made determinations of it, and I have not seen any evidence of them recouping this money from the nonprofit organizations that are robbing the state of Maine of your taxpayer money, my taxpayer money, and your taxpayer money. They are robbing it through fraudulent Medicare charges, main care charges, Medicaid charges. They are robbing us blind, and the Democrats in power are doing nothing about this fraud, but not delivering the tax relief that you should be getting. That leads me to a whole nother level of things, but I think, I'll say this. The eyes of the state and the media should be focused on Lewiston right now with what's going on in that city, with one of their city councilors that was fraudulently put on a school board seat in a ward that he did not live in by the mayor of Lewiston, who then ran for city council not living there because the residence he was claiming was condemned in October of 2024. No one has lived there. Nothing has gone on at that residence other than illegal drug operations. There has subsequently been charges on this individual, and the Democrats, not only in Lewiston, but in the state, are ignoring this. Secretary of State Shanna Bellows has said that vote fraud doesn't exist here in Maine. It doesn't happen. Well, how about this one here? How about this person and the city of Lewiston wrote a letter to this guy asking him, where do you live? We know you don't live here because we've condemned this place. Nobody's lived here for a long time. Where do you live? To which his lawyer responded, basically, it's none of your business where I live. How do you get away with that? How do you get away with not saying where you live in the state of Maine and then just voting there, which is rampant. There's 162,266 people voting in our elections that don't have a form of Maine ID. Please. So there's a lot going on, But I'm going to cut it off there. This video's gone longer than I wanted it to. But I will say that the government that is in control, the Democrats, Governor Mills, and the Democrats in the House and the Democrats in the Senate have prioritized MaineCare fraud over tax cuts for you. That's what's happening in the state of Maine. That should be what the news is talking about. Why have they prioritized MaineCare fraud over your tax cuts that you deserve?
Thank you, Mr. Falkingham, and we appreciate his time and everything in there to go ahead and take care of some details that need to be explained on a regular basis, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. On a regular basis. And he certainly did explain that, folks. We're going to turn it over a little bit here to just another aspect of Mr. Falkingham's busy schedule while the legislature is off. And over to this side of our studio right here, we want to at least show that he is a priority in our lawmaking GOP leadership, as well as Katrina Smith, his minority leader. But one thing we want to go over with you further, folks, in this program here, as we title it, Maine Tax, 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 and Nothing to Show for it, basically. So here we are as we move over just a little bit more in our studio here so you can see what we're talking about. And in fact, another picture of Mr. Falkingham available to you. But here's another part of it, folks, where he was just finishing talking about the taxes and how things are going haywire, not only in Augusta at the legislature, but also in cities like Lewiston, where there tends to be a lot of shenanigans going on. But the one you see before you here, folks, happened back in September of this year. Legislative Republicans urge the revocation of the Gulf of Maine offshore wind leases. Another subject altogether. However, here's where that goes. Lawmakers from the legislature's Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, along with several state representatives and senators. Now, it doesn't say whether it's bipartisan or not. I got a funny feeling, folks, between you, me, and the walls, that there's no Democrats involved with this. Otherwise, it wouldn't say just legislative Republicans are urging this. But what they did back around September 9th, it says here, called on United States Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. You may know him as being appointed by Donald Trump, and U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright to revoke. Hearing this, Janet Mills, revoke all remaining Gulf of Maine offshore wind leases. In the letter, lawmakers praised the Trump administration action to halt new offshore wind leasing and highlighting the risk these projects pose to Maine's $3.2 billion fishing industry. That's revenue, folks. That's revenue. And the risk also poses a threat to over 33,000 related jobs in coastal communities. Jesus, for God's sakes, folks, we've only got 1.4 million people in this state. Is she trying to bankrupt us? Kind of sounds that way. The letter cites 4 notes. And also they want to make note to these federal officials as to what needs to be done. Janet Mills is still in office, unfortunately for us, folks, until the end of 2026, after the November elections, and we damn well better have a Republican majority in the House, Senate, and in the Blaine House. The letter cites unproven technology, lack of power purchase agreements for floating wind platforms, federal assessments warning of risks to fisheries, marine life, and endangered species, something the deflectocrats complained about way back when Mills wanted to try and stop the lobstermen from doing their jobs and the shrimp fishermen with their nets and their cages. Why? Oh, because they were so afraid of the right whale being endangered and being entangled with their giant fins. Baloney! The withdrawal of key industry players from the Maine Research Array project and rising energy costs for Maine families and businesses. Legislators are urging federal officials, in this case folks, to revoke the 4 Gulf of Maine leases auctioned in 2024, just last year, terminate the Maine Research Array lease, cancel the upcoming bottom trawl survey. See? Told you it was all about this. They said, the poor right whales, the fishermen, the lobstermen, and the shrimp fishermen, and others in the fishing industry with their trawlers and their ones that drag their nets are hurting the right whales. Blah, 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 cry, cry. Crap! And legislators are urging federal officials to also review offshore and wind policies to prioritize affordable, reliable energy. Floating offshore wind remains too experimental, too costly, and too disruptive for the people of Maine to bear, is what the letter says in conclusion. Next up, folks, we're going to throw Janet Mills under the bus because actually she deserves more than just being thrown under the bus. We are reading from this particular piece of paper here, folks. I'm going to move it over a little bit so you can see it a bit better, but we'll read every single one of those bullet points you can see before you here. What are they? Well, if we start at the upper left corner here, or upper right may be for you, the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan by Governor Mills. Oh, God, here we go. Approved by the legislature to invest almost $1 billion, you may recall, in federal funds to help Maine recover from effects of the pandemic. That's what it was for. She didn't use it for that, folks. Build an economy poised for future prosperity, she said. Help small businesses, she said. Create good-paying jobs, she said. The lives of Maine people and families, she said. And the circles, all these little dots, folks, that you see right here, yikes. Circles represent recipients of Jobs Plan grant programs. Doesn't say whether they're for Maine citizens or not. Maine people applying with new companies or something of that nature. And to view the complete investment dashboard, you can go to maine.gov/jobsplan. Don't forget, Janet Mills, since this time, folks, when this was opened up and proposed back in late 2023, early 2024, while the last presidential campaign was ongoing and Joe Biden was still president, dang it. You're still recovering from the pandemic. I just heard it right here. The Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan was Mills' plan approved by the legislature to invest almost $1 billion in federal funds. Federal funds, Like I said, Biden was president back then. To help Maine recover from effects of the pandemic. Bull. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, as always, keep your eyes on your pocketbooks and pray for the recovery of our state politically, if not healthy and mentally, for that matter. Always keep your eyes on us right here. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. We're always about truth, facts, reality, and common sense. And on YouTube and Twitter, or X. All our podcasts. Stay safe during the holiday season, folks, and the winter months ahead. Pray that we have solutions and good people in place as the campaign rolls on into the new year, and we have changes, real good changes, towards solidifying the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. So help us God. Peace to all.